Wisdom. It's an incredibly valuable asset. Some would say more precious than gold. It's attractive, appealing, admirable. Conversely, a lack of wisdom is the basis of immaturity, blind spots, and bad decisions. Wisdom. It can be gained over time, but it can't be rushed. But wisdom can be shared. That's precisely what we are here to do right now. Today, we are here to hack wisdom, to distill it, to understand it, and to process it. Why? To get better at life. Welcome to the main thing. This is your new 9-minute podcast. I'm your host, Skip Linneberg, and I've set out to interview the wisest people I know. We'll see what we can learn from each one when they're faced with an incredibly difficult, soul-piercing question. I want to welcome you to the Main Thing podcast. If we haven't met yet, I'm Skip Linneberg. I'll be your host for the next 25 minutes. If you're a regular coming back again, thank you so much for returning to this little cozy learning space that we call the Main Thing podcast, where twice a month we bring you a concise, valuable wisdom lesson from one of the wisest people on earth. These lessons are loaded with wisdom you can apply immediately to your life situation. Studying our guests' wisdom and learning together, we all get a little better at life. So I invite you into today's conversation with our special guest, Dave Schutter. Dave is a military veteran, a pastor, and a pizza aficionado. In this 25-minute episode, you'll learn about the importance of being adaptable, especially through life's twists and turns. You'll also learn about differentiating your personal identity from your work and how to manage both. I want to give a special shout out of gratitude to our newest patron, Matt from West Virginia. Matt, thank you so much for your generous support helping to underwrite our monthly costs of production. Here's a bit more about our wise guest, Pastor Dave Schutter. Dave was born and raised in Cleveland, Ohio. The son of a military man, Dave dreamed of attending West Point, even as a young boy. But a sports injury prevented him from passing the fitness entrance exam. He didn't give up on that dream, and years later, Dave qualified for that appointment to the U.S. Military Academy at West Point. But he turned down that opportunity in favor of something different. Now, along the way, an overseas mission trip to Albania ignited Dave's fire for ministry work. Soon after, he enrolled in seminary. Today, Dave leads the congregation at Northwest Presbyterian Church as their senior pastor. Notably, in Dave's life, he served as a military chaplain in the U.S. Army, including an active deployment in Afghanistan. That earned him the Bronze Star. Dave and his wife Kim and their 3 children live in the Columbus, Ohio area. Over the next 25 minutes, you will discover why Dave Schutter is one of the wisest people I know. Dave Schutter, welcome to the Main Thing podcast.
Very glad to be here, Scott.
The December snow was beautiful, and it was quaint and charming, and I wanted it. And then the January snow, it just decimated us. We just got pounded in January.
Wow.
And it was brutal. And then the February snow is just so unnecessary, and I'm just completely over it. It's not.
That's right.
There's nothing good about it.
No, you just want it to end.
Exactly. But something I would not want to end would be pizza.
Pizza should be forever. Yes, maybe it's a heavenly food. I think we are aligned on our deep love for pizza.
We are part of the pizza posse for sure.
Yes.
Dave, give me last pizza you're ever going to have. Hypothetical, of course. Hypothetical last pizza.
Hypothetical last pizza. This is going to sound more arrogant than it really needs to, but I've been on a quest to make pizza at home for the past couple of years. And Kim and I have had the good opportunity to travel in Italy a couple times. So I've been trying to recreate at home the kinds of pizzas that you could get in Italy. And I'll never quite get there, but It's a worthy quest.
Okay. So describe one for me.
Super thin crust, kind of puffy, kind of just ridge around the outside, baked super fast at high heat. And now it's just down to figuring out the dough. And that's what we like to do on a Friday night or a Saturday night.
I'm not into making my dough anymore, just out of convenience. But Chicken with pesto would be one.
Oh, that sounds nice.
That's good. My wife Lisa has recently started making this one, and she just knocked it out of the park. And I keep going back to it, which means she's doing a chicken pizza with barbecue sauce, and she does these red onions that she sautés, and or
Yeah.
they cook those up a little bit, and then when they're on top of the pizza, they crisp up real nice. It's really good. It's
Wow,
insanely good.
man, that sounds like things that I like right there. Chicken, onion. That sounds great.
So I thank the world for pizza, and also thank you, Dave, for your military service. I know that you served and you come from a family with a proud military heritage. Tell us a little bit about that, would you?
Thanks. I think at this point, I'm the third of fourth generations. My grandfather on my mom's side was a sailor in the World War II South Pacific Navy. My dad was an Army officer in the Vietnam era Army. I was actually born out at Fort Ord in California, where he was serving.
Oh, wow.
And then I joined the Army while I was in seminary as a chaplain candidate. And
Okay.
so I had the opportunity to go to my officer basic training while I was in seminary, and then the next summer do some hospital ministry training for the Army. And eventually I ended up in the reserve and then on active duty with the Army, and served active and reserve for about 12 years. And my son currently is infantry officer in the regular Army stationed in Anchorage, Alaska.
Dave, you're a pastor, and we're going to talk about that, how you got from aspirations of going to West Point and being a military cadet to being a preacher in a pulpit. We're going to come back to that. But first, I want to just help our listeners understand how you and I are connected.
Sure.
So we're connected through a common friend by the name of Jeff
Yes.
Carroll.
Yes. So Jeff and Joyce moved up from West Virginia to our suburb of Columbus, Ohio. And I met Jeff very early, I think, in his relocation up here. We had breakfast and subsequently met Joyce, and she's been teaching in our preschool at the
Awesome.
church for the past several years. And they've been a delightful addition. And that's how we connected. He, over breakfast, told me about this podcast, and now we have a chance to be here.
Yeah, we're very blessed. And Jeff is one of my best friends. He's been on the show twice. A great man who is, without question, unequivocally the most generous and thoughtful person that I know. 192 extra minutes of wisdom. That's what you get when you become a patron of the Main Thing podcast. Many of you continue to say, we want to hear more from these wise guests. That's precisely what patrons of our podcast get. Exclusive access to bonus episodes called The Whole Thing. These 30-minute special shows bring you a deeper dive into our guests' wisdom. Less editing, more laughter. Less time limits, more stories. Unlock those 192 extra minutes of wisdom for yourself for as little as $9 per month through the Patreon platform. And when you become a patron, you also get access to wisdom essays, behind-the-scenes glimpses, and access to special patron-only wisdom gatherings. Head over to patreon.com/themainthingpodcast. Go unlock your 192 extra minutes of wisdom. Dave Schutter, what's the main thing you've learned in your lifetime so far?
Skip, the main thing that I've learned in my lifetime so far is that the identity that God gifts me as his child is far more significant than any identity that I can create for myself on my own. I'm deeply committed to that, and I also forget that all the time. So
Okay.
it's both the wisdom that I've received and it's the wisdom that I need on a continual basis.
Unpack that message for us.
My wife, Kim, and I went to seminary fairly soon after college graduation. And after seminary graduation, we found ourselves church planting in rural western South Dakota. Our call at that time was to help a group of people who wanted to see a church get started in their town, begin that church. We were with them for about 4 years as a brand new pastor, brand new ministry family, and endeavoring to start a new thing. And one of the things that I quickly realized was not only could I not do it on my own, but that I kept getting frustrated with myself in the process.
Okay.
And
What was frustrating you? Give us a couple examples.
realizing that when you are in a role where your main job is to serve people,
Yeah.
there's so little that is really in your control.
Oh, I bet.
And
Yeah.
as a controlling type person,
Hmm.
I would discover that my desired outcomes would seldom become the reality that I was dealing with. Trying to force things, I think having unfair expectations for people,
Hmm.
etc. And so in my mind, my self-talk would very often go in the direction of you're failing at this, you're
Hmm.
not helpful to others, etc. And just in the matter of course, one of the older, wiser people in that group in South Dakota pulled me aside and shared some concepts with me that have become really important to him that aren't particularly novel. I think they're rooted in the core of the Christian faith, and I would probably have said that I had known them intellectually, but I hadn't actually owned them personally.
Mm.
What I really came to understand and value and then cling to for the subsequent 27 years of being a pastor is that God at the outset of our relationship gifts me with an identity as
Hmm.
his kid, as his adopted kid, before I've done anything to earn approval for him, before I've done anything to make him impressed by me, if I could,
Right.
and before I've done anything to disappoint him. So it's really an identity that comes to me by grace.
Yes.
It's received by me, and it's more significant than anything else that I'm going to do that's going to end up on my resume, end up in my LinkedIn, end up in an obituary at some point down the road. That I'm God's kid,
Yeah.
and he's happy with me because he's happy with me. He loves me because he loves me, and from that basis, I'm free to go about my day, whatever might be in it.
At some point in my life, embarrassingly late in life, I came to the realization that my work is not my identity. I am not my job title. I am not what I do from 9 to 5. And I think those of us who are fortunate enough to learn that lesson at some point in their lives feel much less burdened, freer.
One of the things that I've discovered personally with regard to that is that really helps build resilience. In 2018, I discovered that I had a blood cancer, and
Oh my gosh.
that came into my story from 2018 onward. And I'm doing pretty well at this point. I think it's something I'll always have with me. But one of the things that I observed is when your identity is tied into to who you are as God's kid, at least for me,
Hmm.
that gave me an identity and a resilience that allowed me ultimately to onboard this health challenge into my story without it becoming the dominating narrative of my story. And it's something that's in my life, but it's not my life.
Yeah.
Even in the worst case scenario, it's not going to define me. So
Yes.
over time, I can see some good outcomes from it. I think I've developed a lot more empathy over the past 5 years than I probably did
Yeah.
in the previous 40 years of my life.
Dave, if someone has not yet discovered that, what are they likely to be feeling in the way of emotions, pain points, things they're bumping into repeatedly?
I think we end up with some real potential frustration,
Hmm.
and I think particularly, but not exclusively for guys. I think that guys tend to struggle with a kind of a low grade feeling of shame.
Hmm.
It might have been Brene Brown who shorthanded the concept of shame as, guilt is you've done something bad, shame is you are someone bad. Guys can always wonder if we're measuring up. We can always wonder if we are enough.
Yeah.
And I think that question rattles around inside us in different ways, maybe at work, maybe at home. We wonder if we are enough. And before we resolve that a grace-rooted identity in who God says we are, before that gets resolved for us, we're going to continue to struggle with the enough question. And so I think that someone who hasn't come to that yet might be struggling with some, just wondering about their worth and value, might be trying to create worth and value in places that aren't ultimately going to satisfy, might be feeling just a little bit adrift in their own life.
I'd love to hear you share with us about how God led you to become a pastor.
Sure. I did not intend to become a pastor. It's certainly not in our family's family tree of vocations. I really hoped to become an Army officer, and I think that this rooted back both in hearing some of my dad's experiences, but he is a history buff, and so summer trips always revolved around going to historic locations and touring sites. So one summer that included the military academy at West Point, and must have been about sixth grade or so. And we toured it, and I was hooked. I said, that's what I want to do. I really oriented my life towards wanting to make that happen, and was well through the application process. My senior year of high school, I destroyed my shoulder. I had a couple of shoulder operations, couldn't pass the medical physical. And so I ended up going to Wheaton College in Chicago with the hope of playing football again and reapplying to West Point. The guy who lived across the dorm hall from me dragged me to volunteer at his church's youth group, and I really liked it. I really liked working with kids. And then, secondly, I started reading my Bible seriously. At the same time, in parallel, I was reapplying to West Point, going through all that again, learning to use my shoulder again, getting healthy. One, I did get accepted into the military academy.
Oh, wow.
And two, I was reading in the section of Isaiah where Isaiah talks to Israel about our heart's capacity to create idols. And I was just impressed that I had made this aspiration an idol in my own heart. And not that it would be a bad thing to do. Some of my best friends are academy graduates and career officers. So it's certainly a worthy pursuit. But for me, it had become something unhealthy. And so I declined that, went back to Wheaton, continued to work in student ministry, thought more and more about pastoral ministry. And then counterintuitively, I transferred from Wheaton College to Miami University of Ohio because I wanted to test out the idea of being a Christian in a non-Christian school environment. I ended up at Miami and got involved with campus ministry at Miami. That's where I met Kim. While I was at Miami, 1992-ish, everything was changing in Europe. The Berlin Wall had come down. The Soviet Union was collapsing and changing. And the tiny little, very isolated Republic of Albania had overthrown their dictator. There was an opportunity for Christian missionaries to go into Albania, where there really, as far as we knew, hadn't been much of a Christian presence. I think Albania had been officially atheist. And so a group of us from campus went with our campus director and another campus ministry leader, and we had a chance to share the gospel with college students on the last day at the University of Tirana. We didn't know it was going to be the last day of our time there. The campus ended up being closed the subsequent day because of some violence. And I'm heading back to the bus, and an Albanian student leans out of his dormitory window, and he says in Albanian, "Hey, American, come here." And I have a translator with me, a young Albanian translator. And so we go over, and he motions us to come up to his room. And he says, "You are with the Americans who have come to talk about Jesus." And I said, "Yes." He's like, "Start talking." And so I start talking about basic Christianity and who Jesus is and what he's done for us. And he says, again, this is all through a translator. It's like, "Come here." And we go over to his cinder block wall, and he has etched, probably with a knife into the cinder block, some words in Albanian. And he says, "These are the only religious words that I know. I learned them from my grandmother before the communists took over." And it was the opening line of the Lord's Prayer, "Our Father in heaven."
Oh, wow.
And he said, "I have said these words every night, that if this God exists, he would send someone to me to tell me about him.
Ooh.
And you are that person. And now I believe in him." I walked out of that experience saying, I don't know exactly how, but I want to do that.
Yeah.
For the rest of my life.
Giving me chills. Let's wrap this up with a word of encouragement or an intention that you might want to share with our audience of about 1,000 wisdom seekers, folks that want to live a better life, and folks that are focused on personal growth and development.
If you're struggling to find an identity to build your life on, you're not alone. Mm-hmm. And so I would encourage you to keep asking if what you're building on is strong enough for your best day and your worst day. Mm-hmm. And if it's not, just to keep looking, and maybe to consider if there isn't an identity that could be gifted to you that's stronger than one that you could create for yourself.
Dave, thank you so much for coming on today and sharing your wisdom, sharing your wonderful personal story. We've learned a lot. We've had some great laughs, and we've talked about pizza. So I consider that a good day.
It's been a win, Skip. I thank you for the opportunity. It's been a privilege to talk with you.
That goes by incredibly fast, doesn't it? Time flies when you're hacking wisdom. Thank you for listening to this wisdom conversation. If you enjoyed this podcast and found the wisdom lesson valuable, then I encourage you to share it with a loved one or friend. Did you know podcast recommendations from one person to another remain the strongest form of podcast growth worldwide? It's true, and we'd appreciate you helping spread the good word. Let's give a big hearty thank you to the crew of the Main Thing podcast. These are the folks who truly keep the wisdom pipeline flowing. Audio engineer Bob Hotchkiss, strategy advisor Andy Malinowski, public relations and partnerships guru Rachel Bell, social media and digital marketing expert Chloe Linneberg, graphic designer Emma Malinowski, and of course our patrons, those generous folks who provide monthly funding support to help underwrite our costs of production. I couldn't do it without you, nor would I want to. Your feedback matters a lot. If you have a question, a suggestion, maybe an idea, or even a nomination of a future show guest, I'd love to hear from you. Email me at info@themainthingpodcast.com. Well, that's a wrap for this show. I'm your host, Skip Linneberg, signing off for now and inviting you to join us again next time for another special delivery of wisdom. Hey, Skip here again. I just hopped back on for a moment to reflect on what we learned today from this wonderfully rich wisdom conversation. Now, Dave and I battled through some pretty wicked technical difficulties prior to recording. That led to some audio quality that's a bit below our usual standard. I'm sure you heard a couple moments of garbled audio, perhaps some static or latency. Now, those difficulties were not going to stop us from recording, nor would they dim the shine on Dave's inspiring message or his remarkable stories. As I reflect today, we heard tons of valuable wisdom regarding our identity, who we truly are, in the lasting eternal sense. It isn't the title printed beneath our name on a business card or in our email signature. It's much, much more about the impact we have on others, how we help others lift them up, how we make others feel when we humble ourselves. God can use every one of us to make an impact, often an unexpected or surprise impact, just like the one Dave had on that young Albanian college student back in the 1990s. I'd love to hear what stood out to you, so drop me an email, and I'll catch you again in about 2 weeks for another special delivery of wisdom.